Straight talk, hair loss, Nick Shell, let's do this thing. I want to present a theory to you, which I already think a lot of people will immediately disagree. But I present this theory today, which I will cause people to rise against me by saying this, I think. My theory is this: there is no shame in losing your hair. People expect, especially men of European descent, to lose their hair. It's expected. If you don't, then you're the lucky one that got the longest straw, all right? So it's abnormal if you go your whole life and don't lose a good amount of hair. For the most part, that's what people expect to happen. It's so normal, people expect it. But so the point is, there's no shame in losing your hair. We've talked about that before. There's no shame in losing your hair, okay? But what if we take it this level? What if we say, I'm thinking back when I was in college, and there was this one professor, and one time somebody saw him at the gym. He was playing basketball with some of the students, and he was actually like 55 years old. But they saw him playing basketball, and he's like, "Hey!" And he called out to him, and they didn't recognize him because he was always wearing a toupee. And they realized, oh, that's the professor without his toupee on. He takes it off to play basketball. Now, as you hear that story, that seems shameful, right? Like, it makes that professor kind of seem pathetic that he wore a toupee and tried to deceive people and tried to, in essence, kind of be something he wasn't, and then strangely takes his toupee off when he plays basketball. Strange story, but it's like, where do you draw the line, though? If you say, well, that's different, Nick. That's old school toupee, hairpiece. That's different than someone getting a hair transplant or someone with labor using whatever kind of drug it is, whether it's Rogaine, Propecia, I don't care, you name it, I don't care what the drug is, but any kind of extreme length to save your hair on it. And I know you can say the same thing with me about the rosemary oil, but keep in mind, I'm only doing it for the sake of the video channel. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to save it. I don't care about that. I'm doing it for an audience that wants to see if this will work. And then I can be free of that and not have to worry about it anymore. My point is this, though. I propose to you that there definitely is shame in a guy trying to save his hair through things like that if people find out. Now, for me, I don't judge anybody for that. I don't care what other people do. But I think it's one of those secretive things. I don't think people typically go around talking about the fact that they've had a hair transplant or that they do whatever kind of drugs it is, because I think there is some shame in not going bald, but I think there's shame in trying to hide it or trying to stop it. That's my theory, and that's what I want us to have an honest discussion about. Remember, I'm not here to judge anybody for their decisions on trying to stop their hair loss at all. I'm do whatever you want to do, but what I'm talking about is not you or even the people who try to hide or stop their hair loss. This point, the whole video is about society's perception. Again, here's what I want to propose to you, and here's what I want you to debate. The first point is this: there's no shame in a man losing his hair. People expect it to happen, and if it doesn't, that's the exception to the rule. It's so normal for a man of European descent to lose his hair, they expect it to happen. So there's no shame in losing hair. There's nothing shameful about something so natural. But to counter that point, the opposite is not true. The opposite would be, but if you try to stop or hide something so natural, you kind of have to be discreet about it. Like, you don't want to announce to everybody, hey everybody, I'm going to be going to get a hair transplant. Now, if anything, you get the hair transplant and someone says, hey, something looks different about you. And if you felt comfortable with them, you might say, you know what, I got a hair transplant down at Boswell, whatever the place, I don't know, whatever the place is. But it's still not something you would announce. It's not something I don't think most people would be proud of it, because I think, again, you have to be discreet about it. So I think there's a certain level of shame, can we use the word shame, in trying to hide your hair loss. Whereas if you just go bald, people may notice it and say something, worst case scenario, but there's not shame in that. You can't be ashamed of going bald when it's so natural. That's what I want to propose. That's fundamentally what I believe, and I don't know that I've really made a video that just came out there and said that. That there's no shame in going bald. I've talked about that part, but that there is some level, some amount of shame in trying to cover it up. And here's the closing note. I've said before that people aren't afraid to be wrong. We all know that we're going to be wrong throughout the day, throughout life. We're going to be wrong. People aren't afraid to be wrong. They're afraid of being seen as hypocrites. That's what people are most afraid of. They're being afraid of being exposed as being a hypocrite. And I think that ties into this concept of why there's shame in trying to cover up or stop hair loss if people know about it. Because it's almost hypocritical in that if we naturally, most of us lose so many of us, I can't say most, but so many of us lose our hair anyway, to try to stop that almost seems hypocritical because, oh, you're not one of us? You're trying to fight nature on this? So I think that would be where the shame comes from. Can you relate to me? I assume a lot of you will disagree with me, that there's no shame in going bald, but there is some amount of shame in trying to stop it. There's this unspoken amount of hypocrisy, and why don't you just man up and just own your hair loss, okay? I want us to discuss this because I think this is very important. I think it's fundamental to the core of really what this channel is about. So I want us to discuss this. Remember, this isn't about what people do. It's about the way society perceives men and how they deal with their hair loss. That you're that you're a hypocrite if you try to stop your hair loss, because the thing you should do is just to accept your hair loss. I think that's what society thinks about it. You tell me.